hypothalamus and the pituitary, the regulation center. So this video is going to talk about what's so special about the hypothalamus, how the hypothalamus and pituitary interact, and the hormones that are involved with both. So again, hopefully you remember that the hypothalamus is the homeostatic center. It's the place that says and checks and monitors and regulates all the different types of things. Is your blood too salty? Is it too watery? Is it too hot? Is it too cold? Is it too much calcium, too little calcium? Is there too much pressure, too little pressure, blood pressure? It does a whole lots and lots of things for you. What's so special about it compared to the rest of the brain as well, because it is neural tissue, is that it is lacking a blood-brain barrier. Makes sense. It's that thermostat that needs to be stuck into the blood to really see what's going on. If you have a barrier to it, maybe you're gonna kind of inhibit its ability to, well, measure things. The pituitary is the thing that's dangling off of it. It's dangling off of it via the infundibulum. The infundibulum is the little stalk. The infundibulum is made of a neural tissue and some neurons that go into the posterior pituitary, which we'll talk about here shortly. But this slide seems to be deciding, hey, let's talk about the anterior pituitary, aka the adenohypophysis. The anterior pituitary is the bulk majority in weight of the pituitary gland. It is also the one that produces of the posterior and anterior pituitary gland, it produces the most hormones, in fact a total of 7. While the posterior pituitary only makes about 2. And it really is more like an extension of the hypothalamus, because the neurons from the hypothalamus come on down and say hello. You do want to know the 2 hormones of the pituitary gland, oxytocin, which maybe you remember from the positive feedback example, and antidiuretic hormone, which helps you make certain that you keep some of your water on inside of you rather than out. Antidiuretic hormone we will definitely talk about in A&P4. Now again, that infundibulum is sort of just an extension of that hypothalamus with neurons coming down into that posterior pituitary. And the origins of this pituitary tissue, just demonstrating it again, that the hypothalamus is just that extension of the posterior pituitary with some of the tissue coming in from a portion of the mouth, just like a folding into the mouth. Now, because of that setup, there isn't a direct link via neural tissue to the anterior pituitary gland. That could be a problem if you sort of want them to cooperate, right? Well, fortunately for us, there's more than just one pathway to communicate things, not just electrical, but chemical. How the chemical works is this. You have a thing called the hypophyseal portal system. This is super duper important. I'm going to say this one more time. The hypophyseal portal system. Why it's called a portal system is this. Usually when you have blood, it goes arteries, blah, 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 down into capillaries, and then blah, 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 up into veins, and back to the heart. But a portal system has arteries, blah, 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 capillary, venules, capillary, veins, heart. It has 2 capillary beds it has to go through. There's only 2 other places in the body that has this little setup. It is a very rare setup. Now, hopefully all of you are going, this is how the anterior pituitary and the hypothalamus talk to each other. You are absolutely right. The hypothalamus will secrete the hormones that it wants down into this blood, where it crosses over into this little hypophyseal veins and hypophyseal plexus here, the secondary plexus, where it interacts with the anterior pituitary tissue and causes it to release the hormones it actually wants to be released. So I would recommend remembering the 7 different types of hormones that are released from it. Let's see, what they are. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and dive into a couple of ways to remember the different types of things that are released from these tissues. A lot of the terminology hopefully will help you remember its origin. So for instance, any hormone that says blah blah blah, release hormones, it could be gonadotropin, it could be thyroid, what have you. As long as it says release hormones at the end, you can bet your bottom dollar that it's coming from the hypothalamus. If it says blah 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 blah, inhibiting hormones, then more likely than not, it is coming from the hypothalamus. Now, if it says blah 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 blah, stimulating hormone, blah 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 blah, then it is coming from the anterior pituitary gland. So if you see a hormone that says stimulating hormone, blah stimulating hormone, where does it come from? You're going to go, oh, I know exactly where this came from. I have no idea what the first word means, but stimulating hormone means it's coming from the anterior pituitary. Yay! So here's some examples. You got G8 growth hormone releasing hormone, TRH, GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone. You have yourself for inhibin, or you got growth hormone inhibiting hormone, as well as a little bit of inhibin coming along. You also have for the SH examples, FSH, TSH, MSH. Follicular blah blah blah, thyroid blah 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 blah, and melanocortin blah 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 blah. Or sorry, melanocyte blah 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 blah. So here are the things that come from your anterior pituitary. You got your human growth hormone, you got thyroid stimulating hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, all of which, well, these two right here have a lot to do with the development of the metabolism in the human body after birth. These two have a lot to do with the reproductive and development of the egg and sperm. Prolactin, well, the very primary purpose that they discovered right off the bat, hence why it's called prolactin, even though it has a lot of other things that it does, we'll talk about that maybe, is that it induces lactation. Adrenocorticotropic hormone has a lot to do with stress and other things such as that. And melanocyte stimulating hormone actually has a little bit of an interesting setup going on. We will talk about that in a little while. Now, let's go ahead and dive into these different types of things. You'll see here it's just demonstrating that they do come from different types of cells. All these guys don't come from one specific cell from the anterior pituitary. All of them don't originate from one cell. They originate from different types of cells that release them. So one last thing to note, a lot of the times how it's regulated, these hormones, again, the majority of them have that inhibitory negative feedback loop, with very few being a positive feedback loop. And with that, we are going to be talking about the individual types of hormones in our next couple of videos, each of which are given their own specific small mini video. I will see you